The mountain wind did not just blow. It struck. It tore at Arjun, forcing him to lean his entire weight into the slope just to keep moving. Every step up the winding path felt like a fight against the earth itself. His pulse hammered in his ears, a frantic rhythm that matched the storm of thoughts he carried. He reached the stone gates, chest heaving, his hands trembling from the cold and the sheer exhaustion of his own mind. He pushed the heavy wood open, expecting a challenge, a debate, or at least a greeting. Instead, he found nothing. The air inside the courtyard was dead still. A dozen figures sat in rows, eyes closed, faces smooth as polished riverstone. Arjun stepped forward, his boots crunching loudly on the gravel, a sound that felt like a scream in the heavy, suffocating silence. He stopped, waiting for someone to look up, to acknowledge the intrusion, to offer a word. Nobody moved. The monks remained fixed in their positions, their breathing so shallow it was invisible. Arjun stood in the center of the courtyard, his own restless energy vibrating in the air, clashing violently against the absolute stillness of the space. He opened his mouth to speak, but the silence seemed to press back. Days bled into weeks, and the courtyard became a cage of his own making. Arjun sat where they sat, legs folded, spine rigid, trying to force his body into the same geometry of peace. It was a lie. His muscles screamed for movement, a dull ache radiating from his lower back up into his neck. He tried to focus on the breath, but his mind refused the leash. Thoughts raced like wild horses, galloping through memories of the life he left behind, turning every second into a frantic, internal chase. He shifted his weight, the gravel beneath him grinding with a sound that felt like a gunshot in the stillness. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the sight of the unmoving figures, but the silence was louder than any noise. It pressed against his skin, a physical weight that made his pulse hammer against his temples. He opened his eyes, staring at the stone floor, his hands gripping his knees until his knuckles turned white. Every fiber of his being demanded he stand, run, or scream, but he remained pinned to the spot. The silence was no longer empty. It was a physical weight, a thick, suffocating blanket that Arjun wanted to tear away. He watched the monks, their faces carved from granite, their eyes locked in a void he could not reach. He scowled, his jaw tight enough to ache. Every breath they took seemed to mock his own ragged, uneven gasps. He shifted, his knees popping in the quiet, a sharp, jarring sound that echoed off the stone walls. He waited for a reaction, a flicker of annoyance, a single glance. Nothing. They remained as still as the mountain peaks themselves. He grabbed a handful of gravel and squeezed, the sharp edges biting into his palm, a desperate attempt to ground himself in pain rather than this maddening peace. He let the stones drop, one by one, a slow, rhythmic clatter that felt like a countdown to an explosion. He wanted to scream, to shatter the stillness, to force them to acknowledge the fire burning inside him. Instead, he sat, his body trembling with the effort of containment. He glared at the monk across from him, searching for a crack in the mask of serenity. He found only the same, terrifying, unbroken calm. The sitting felt like an eternity. The wind outside the monastery walls shifted. It was no longer a chaotic howl, but a steady, rhythmic hum that vibrated through the stone floor. Arjun braced himself for the usual irritation, but the sound caught him off guard. He listened. Beneath the wind, he heard the monks. Their breathing was not individual gasps or sighs. It was a collective, resonant tide, rising and falling in perfect unison. He tried to count the cycles, but his mind stumbled. The rhythm was too deep, too ancient. He felt the vibration in his own chest, a sympathetic resonance that pulled at his frantic thoughts. He stopped fighting the stillness. He stopped trying to force his own pace onto the room. The wind hummed, the monks breathed, and the gap between them began to close. His heart, which had been hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, slowed its frantic pace. The heat in his face cooled. The tension in his shoulders, held tight for weeks, slumped. He did not choose to relax. The rhythm simply pulled the tightness out of him. The storm within, the wild horses of his mind, suddenly lost their footing. A strange, shocking silence flooded his head, as the frantic energy simply dissolved into the air. The sun dipped behind the jagged peaks. Shadows stretched across the stone floor, painting the monastery in deep hues of orange and violet. Arjun remained in the center of the room, his posture upright, his breathing slow and shallow. The frantic energy that had once driven him to pace, to fidget, and to fight was gone. He watched the light fade against the wall, tracing the slow movement of the glow until it vanished into the gray of twilight. He looked at his hands, resting motionless on his knees. He had traveled miles, climbed mountains, and endured weeks of silence, believing he was hunting for a destination or a hidden truth. The realization arrived without fanfare. There were no grand answers waiting in the peaks. There were no secrets to be unearthed in the distance. He had spent his life looking outward, chasing ghosts of purpose, while the stillness he craved had been buried beneath his own noise all along. He exhaled, a long, steady stream of air that carried no tension. He was finally quiet.